This is the first double review of 2024, and we're gonna talk about the Metagate Huge Fire and the Metagate Black Fire, which unlike what their name indicates, they are some of the smallest figures in my collection in the Legend scale. A huge thank you to Josie Store for sponsoring this double review, and it will help me a lot if you use my code GABOTFR in this little box above. And well, let's get started. These two figures look excellent. Obviously, these two are representations and variations of the Optimus Prime design that we saw in the Bumblebee movie, but in the Legend scale. Now, for those of you who don't know, as I explained of my review of Magic Squirrel Light of Peace, the Legends class figures are simply figures of a smaller scale, although lately these third-party companies have been giving them masterpiece style engineering, which allows this Optimus Prime figure to look like this and not like this. There are many G1 figures of this smaller scale, and I like that little by little we are seeing more and more of these figures from the movies. Anyway, let's start talking about Optimus Prime, since it's the design that we saw on screen, and I must say it looks very good. It's really impressive what Metagate achieved here. Sure, it has some details that don't look as good due to its tiny scale, but it's surprising that they could get this close to the CGI design on something so small. Not even Studio Series could do it. But I do gotta say that even though I really like how this figure looks, I mean, he came with me to see the statue of Optimus Prime when I came to promote the movie in Mexico, I must say that the figure from Lucky Cat, the creators of that very good Legend scale Bumblebee figure that we already reviewed, I think that, at least in my opinion, it does look better than this figure. But we'll talk about that when we review that figure. This figure has a lot of sculpted detail that gives it a lot of visual appeal, and the paint is alright. Also, look how clean and close to the CGI model the back is. Again, with a lot of sculpted and painted detail. And I must say that for such a small scale, the head mold and all the small painted details turned out wonderfully. All in all, I think that this figure of Optimus, due to its tiny scale, is very surprising, at least in robot mode. And now let's talk about the Nemesis Prime figure, which also looks great. Obviously, like any other Optimus Prime figure, a black repaint was inevitable, but still it looks pretty good. All the red and blue surfaces changed to a black color that looks quite good. The silver shades remain practically the same, and the yellowish tones now turn to this very pretty mint blue hue. The sculpture is exactly the same, in fact you can obviously exchange pieces between these two, and the head looks very good as well. That metallic red in the eyes looks very pretty. In conclusion, both figures look really good, especially comparing them to the CGI design. I think that Metagate did something really good here. And before moving on to the accessories, I just want to mention two things. The first is that the tiny Autobot and Decepticon shoulder badges obviously didn't come like this out of the box with the figures. These are the smallest stickers that shows the store sends with their packages, and I think they look great. And the second is that there are already two other repaints of this mold, a shattered glass purple version and a white Ultra Magnus one. They both look great, but I don't think I'm gonna be getting them. I just felt like mentioning them. Now, in terms of accessories, both figures come with the same three. The first is Prime's typical Lion Blaster, and it looks as iconic as it should. You can plug it to either of the fists, or if you prefer, you could store it on the back, plugging this tab on this port. That doesn't look bad, but I think it would look better if the ports were a little closer to the sides. And both figures also have two replaceable open hands. I've never really used this, but it's cool to have the option in case someone wants to put him on a more dynamic pose. That being said, to transform the figure we will have to reconnect the fists, since the open hands don't fit in their place. As you can see, a somewhat limited selection of accessories, but really for that price I didn't expect much more. But where these figures do compensate a lot is in terms of their articulation. The head is on a ball joint with a lot of range. It can look up this far and down this far. It can tilt side to side, and you can rotate 360 degrees. The arms can also rotate 360 degrees, though they can get a little bit stuck. They can come out this far, just be careful not to unplug these joints. Bicep rotation, about 90 degrees at the elbow, and a wrist rotation. Waist rotation, and we have a very nice ab crunch. The legs are on ball joints that can barely kick forwards, which is kinda disappointing, but we do have these joints due to transformation that allow him to kick a lot more forwards, and they can kick back this far. Side skirts can barely move out of the way, and they can do a very good split. The leg can rotate both on the ball joint and on this lower thigh joint, and more than 90 degrees on this double jointed knee. The feet can move down a lot due to transformation, but it can barely move up, but you can unplug this part here that is more for the transformation to make the feet move kind of upwards. We have no rotation, and you get an excellent pivot. As you can see, the articulation is surprisingly good on these figures. You have to understand how the joints work to be able to get the most out of them, mainly those in the legs, but once you do, you can put them in very dynamic poses, and they look very good. And yeah, I'm quite satisfied with both figurines. It's not something that I expected from Metagate, but I'm not complaining at all. But anyway, I don't think there's much more to talk about, so we can move on to a size comparison. Here they are next to SH Figuarts Iron Man, Masterpiece Movie Bumblebee knockoff, Unique Toys Optimus Prime. Here they are with Magic Square Light of Victory, with Lucky Cat Bumblebee, with New Age Bumblebee and Cliff Jumper, with Transcraft Bumblebee. Here they are with Mega Tank Monocrat. That's a big boot! And finally, here they are with Magnificent Mecha Optimus Prime. And yeah, here you have these figures on robot mode, and now we can move on to the transformation to talk about the weakest point of these figures. And here we have Prime and Prime in their truck modes. And look, the trucks themselves are alright. I even think that the black color helps Nemesis hide all those small defects it has, but in the end they are truck modes that were quite affected by the small size of the figures. Really, from the front they look excellent, but when we start to see the sides, the illusion is greatly lost. Again, I appreciate that they gave priority to that robot mode, and I also understand the limitations of working on such a small figure. I just think it's important to mention those small details. And it's not that they look bad per se, but just to give a few examples, the sides and top look quite paneled, and the bed of the truck is very long, very thin, and very short. And again, there wouldn't be such a problem if it weren't for that beautiful Lucky Cat figure that fixes the truck mode much better in my opinion, for what we've seen so far. But in the end, they are serviceable truck modes. I particularly like how the red windshield looks on the Nemesis figure, but sadly it doesn't match as well with the red windows that they use on the sides. The Optimus Prime figure looks a little bit more boring, but the colors blend a lot better. And in this mode we have no storage for their blaster. The best we can do is kind of jam it in the gaps of the truck bed, and the hands obviously have nowhere to go. That's why I just leave them in the box. And if you line everything up correctly, they both roll really nice. And overall, those are the truck modes of Metagate's Optimus Prime and Nemesis Prime. They aren't the prettiest thing in the world, but again, they work. And anyway, let's move on to a quick size comparison. Here they are with Iron Man, Bumblebee, Toy World Prime. Here they are with the Hasbro Legends figures, with Studio Series Prime, with the New Age Bumblebee and Cliff Jumper, with Lucky Cat Bumblebee, and finally here they are with Wei Yang Fire Scorpion. And yeah, there you have the Metagate Huge Fire and Black Fire, two very good figures, both of which I got thanks to showzstore.com. Right now the Huge Fire figure is in stock, and sadly the Black Fire figure is sold out. Thank you to Showz Store for sponsoring this review, and remember to use my code GABUTFR in this box up here. Links in the description. Anyway, let's transform these trucks into the robot modes to give them their final grades. And honestly, I'll give them 4 stars. Don't get me wrong, they are not bad figures at all, they just have a few details that for this size are completely understandable. I just think that for what you get, they are a little overpriced, and for that reason alone, they don't get the 5th star. But still, if you want a very fun desk toy, these two are very good options. Although with the already revealed Optimus Prime from Lucky Cat, I think it would be better to wait and see how that one turns out. And yeah, thanks a lot for watching this first review of the year, and I'll see you next week with another small double review.